Thank you, Darcy, and thank you all again for being here at the Digital Teaching Symposium, and welcome to our session on Winning Course Design, a panel of Blackboard Exemplary course winners. With us today, we have Catherine Barber from University of St. Thomas, Claire Stuve from the University of Toledo, and Leslie Casarez from Angelo State University. I also want to point out that we have our chat session going, so if you have questions, please pop them into the chat and our speakers will try to answer them as we're going through the presentation today. And we'll also have time at the end for Q&A. So let's get started. So we're going to begin with Catherine. Please give us a brief introduction of who you are, your institution, and tell us a little bit about your course. And if your course was fully online, if it was hybrid, how did you show student interaction for the reviewers? So Catherine?
Yes, thank you, Monica. Hi, I'm Catherine Barber. I'm an associate professor in the School of Education and Human Services at the University of St. Thomas in Houston. And my course is Human Growth and Development, which is a graduate level course in our Master of Education program. Students who take this course are preparing to be educational diagnosticians or school counselors. When I've taught this course, it has been fully online. However, it is designed to be flexible. It can be offered fully online or in a hybrid format. And it's also adaptable to different time frames, such as 7, 10, or 15 weeks.
Thank you. And Leslie, can you tell us about your course?
Hi, my name is Leslie Casarez, and I am the program coordinator for the Master of Science in Professional School Counseling and an associate professor at Angelo State University. I am in the College of Education in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction. The course that we submitted was the School Counseling Techniques course. This is a graduate level, fully online course. It is for students that are seeking the master's degree in professional school counseling and also seeking their school counseling certification. And this is just really an overview of counseling and consultation theories, practices, just an understanding of all those systems and theories and strategies that they need to learn for those things.
Hi, I'm Claire Stuve from the University of Toledo, and the course that I designed with a colleague of mine, Dr. Deborah Boardley, is Public Health Nutrition. My title as a staff member is actually the Director of Curriculum and Testing Services at the university. So I work on a lot of curriculum and instructional design, where Dr. Boardley was more the subject matter expert from public health. So Dr. Boardley is a dietitian. And this course covers nutrition, but from the public health perspective. So it started as a 6-week summer course. It is now actually being offered in the spring semester as a full-term course because it had such a large interest from students. But it has the scientific nutritional portions at the beginning of the course, but then it's really coming at the content from the public health perspective and how nutrition is so important to public health.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to ask each of you to talk about what prompted you to get involved in the Exemplary course program. Why did you decide to submit a course for this? Catherine?
Sure. Well, I actually first participated in the Exemplary course program in 2016 with a different course, and I had a very positive experience. I found the self-assessment process and peer review to be extremely helpful for really clarifying the components of an Exemplary course. So then I used what I learned during that first experience with the ECP to improve my other courses, as well as to help a colleague prepare her own award-winning course. Now, when the opportunity arose to submit my current course for consideration, I felt like I was better prepared. And I also felt that this course included some really innovative strategies that I had not included in my previous ECP course. In particular, I used an engaging realistic scenario as the organizing framework for this class. And that was something I hadn't seen in many other courses, so I felt that it might be of interest to ECP reviewers.
And Leslie?
So our institution really actually promotes our faculty to participate in the ECP process. They mention it a lot during our faculty trainings. We have a local BBX conference every year, and it's mentioned quite a bit there as well. The group that submitted this award is actually the faculty from our program. So myself, Dr. Audrey Heron, and Miss Ashley Atwood were the 3 that submitted this course. And we've been writing quite a few new courses because this is a new degree program. We're kind of like Catherine. We submitted a course last year and we missed the mark just a little bit, but the feedback that we got from that course kind of spurred us on and caused us to go ahead and submit this year. And we also had some things that we had incorporated in this course that we hadn't done before. And we thought, this is innovative, it's different, and maybe something that will bump us up to that level that will cause us to go ahead and get that award. And it worked. So we were really excited.
Thank you. And Claire?
We submitted this course to the program because we just really like to get as much feedback as we can on our courses. I also have submitted courses in the past to the program. I very much appreciate getting the feedback from different other employees, staff, faculty, to get different perspectives, because our students are coming from all different backgrounds and have different perspectives. So the more eyes that I can get on the course to get feedback, the more I can help my students.
Thank you. And I do want to follow up. I know Leslie and Catherine, you mentioned that having submitted more than once for an ECP. I'm going to ask each of you just to talk a little bit about that experience of submitting more than once. So Catherine?
Sure. Yeah. So I think about 3 or 4 years ago is when I submitted my first course, and actually I had the good fortune to receive an exemplary score at that time, and that was a very big confidence booster, I would say. So whenever I decided to apply for this one, I really, again, took what I had learned the first time around, plus some new things that I had learned and discovered, and was lucky to receive an exemplary score this time around as well. But I feel like the experience the second time around was smoother than the first time around because of increased familiarity with the rubric, having gone through the peer review process, seeing what people said about the course, and so forth.
And Leslie?
So last year was the first time that we had submitted for the ECP award. And as I mentioned, we had barely missed the cutoff, but we felt like we got really good feedback from the 2 reviewers that did our course. So we took that feedback and we implemented some of their suggestions. And then this was a different course that we submitted this time around. So it was a little bit different process, but we had the feedback from the first time. And I think just self-assessing using the rubric is big as well. So taking that and doing it as we're implementing these new courses in our program and as we're going through those things has been a big help as well. So the 2 things together, I think, before we submitted it this year really made a difference as well.
I know that Leslie worked on a team for her course, but Catherine, Claire, Leslie, I'd like you all to talk about if you worked with anyone else on your campus in designing your course. And if so, how did you collaborate with other people on your campus in designing your course? So Catherine?
Sure. I've had the really good fortune to have 2 wonderful collaborators, Dr. Janet McCollum and Dr. Wendy Mabudiam. And although we did not work on this course together specifically, at the time when I was redesigning this course, the 3 of us were actually working on a book on creating online courses. So I applied much of what I learned from our own conversations and research for the book to the redesign of this course.
And mine was just a collaborative effort between all of the full-time faculty that work in the professional school counseling program. So as the program coordinator, my job is really to develop the overall outline for the course, the assignments, ensure that we're really meeting those state and national standards that we need to have in the program. We typically will split the modules up between the various faculty that are working on that course, and then have them just create the various pieces that are in there. We also have somebody that will review it after we're done, probably in a different program, because, school counselors, counseling people, we all tend to think kind of the same. So we'll get somebody from a different program to look through it and see if there's anything that's just really standing out. Dr. Herron, who I mentioned earlier, has gone through a transparent design program. So she has kind of trained all of us on using transparent design in our courses, but we make sure that she goes through it and looks to see if we've got it in all of the modules as well. So we've all kind of got our own little pieces that we work on, but we've been together now for so long that it works very smoothly, and we're kind of a well-oiled machine, I guess.
Thank you, Leslie. And Claire?
Well, this course was definitely a collaborative effort. It could not have happened without it being that way. So my colleague, Dr. Deborah Boardley, was the subject matter expert, and I was more the designer and multimedia expert. And so we would meet regularly, and our first meeting, I said, what I want you to do is write down what you would if you were writing a textbook. And so she did that for every module. And then she would send me the Word document, and I would take all of her words and I turned it into multimedia. And we used a lot of SCORM objects. And then we created our modules and then imported them into Blackboard that way. So it was very multimedia and active learning heavy.
Thank you so much, Pat. Now, many people here today are very, very interested in seeing how your course design fostered student interaction and collaboration. So I'd like to give each of you a few minutes to describe that, like how you designed your course so that you would have a lot of student interaction and collaboration. So Catherine, we'll start with you.
So student interaction and collaboration are really central in my course. I believe that learning occurs through self-reflection and dialogue. So most of the activities in the course involve student discussion and collaboration. In the scenario that organizes the course, as you can see in our landing page here, our welcome message, students are working as apprentices at a human growth and development office at a fictional school district. And in each module, get to the next one. Yes, they rotate to a different department that corresponds to a stage of development. So you can see the landing page for the modules, and they're organized by departments: Department of Adulthood, Prenatal Development, Infancy, and so forth. Throughout the departments, students work together in small groups to complete various learning activities, like a case study-based discussion board and an educational campaign project. For the discussion boards, each team receives a case that presents a family with children in various developmental stages who are experiencing difficulties at school. And each team member selects one of the developmental stages to specialize in. And then each discussion board spotlights one of those stages. So at that time, the designated team member who is specializing in that stage acts as the facilitator. Each discussion requires students to collaborate, to use course resources to generate hypotheses, to explain the behavior of the child whose stage is the focus of the module, and they have to interact, respond to each other's questions, reply and return, and so forth. So that's one component of interaction. The other one that I'll just mention quickly is a team project that involves creating an educational campaign on a topic that's relevant to human development. So students choose a topic and then select individual subtopics that relate to the stage they've been specializing in. The teams create presentations, brochures, an advertisement, or any other format to convey their message. And they work together throughout the course to research the topic, learn about how to create an effective educational campaign, and so forth. The whole course culminates in a campaign showcase where the teams post their campaign, and then other team members from other teams have to respond to the campaigns, ask questions, and so on and so forth.
Well, that sounds really engaging and exciting. Leslie, can you?
So of course, I think everyone tends to do a lot of text discussions, but we also utilize video discussions, and not particularly in this class, but we use a lot of different things. Flipgrid is one that we've done in quite a few courses. So here's an example of the Flipgrid in this class that we use for a solution-focused brief counseling board. Hopefully the student isn't watching, because I tried to catch a good face, but it's hard when they're doing a video. We have a class cafe forum, and that's just a place where students can come in and ask any question that they want, anything, and we'll try to get in there and answer it. We encourage them to answer each other, but they don't always do that. The ones who have been in the program longer, of course, tend to be the ones that will jump in there and answer those questions. The one that we're really excited about in this particular course is a group assignment. And of course, students don't always like group assignments, no matter what age level or anything that they are. But this one, we really start communicating the group assignment early. So in module 1, they have something that they have to do. They just go in and preview that assignment. In module 3, they have to go in and sign up for their group topic. In module 4, they have to start communicating with their other group members. And then once we get to module 7 and 8, they'll actually start that was a lot of module 4 where they're communicating. Module 7 and 8, they actually start the assignment where they're working with the other group members. And we've gotten really good feedback from the students. They actually like the interaction. You get those that still say, well, I did all the work, but they actually are rating each other on their participation as well, which I think makes a difference also. We do give them the tips for working online with other students. And this came from a Drexel EDU that we found, but it's a great graphic. We use that transparent design that I mentioned earlier, which is just giving them, what is the rationale for what I'm doing this? How does it connect to the objectives for the modules? And and what's the purpose? Why am I doing what I'm doing? I think a lot of times students don't always understand, okay, what do you have me doing this for? And once we tell them that, they kind of go, oh, okay, now I understand why you want me to do that. And part of their competencies are learning to work with others. So they need to be able to do that in their program as well. This is just the instructions for that group assignment. And there's lots of moving pieces to it. And then of course we send out the weekly global announcements, and I had to pick on Dr. Heron. She's teaching that class this semester. And I liked that because it says, if you haven't laughed today, make sure that you do when you see my hat. So just getting a little bit of humor in there for the students makes a big difference as well. And then that detailed feedback on the assignments, I think, is also a huge way to interact with your students. So global feedback that's very detailed, and then feedback in the rubric also. And I just picked a couple of examples here from a previous course. But the students really appreciate when we go in and really take the time to leave that feedback. And we don't get as many questions and we don't get as many emails. We have about 400 students in the program, and the 3 of us are the only full-time faculty. So if we did not leave the feedback that we leave, we would have a lot of emails and a lot of questions. So it may take a little bit of work up front, but it saves us a lot of time on the other side. And then providing the rubrics in advance of the assignments also. The students get this up front, and we tell them, check your work against the rubric and make sure that it's going to meet that assignment. And I just think that all of these things are helping to communicate to those students, and it really just helps them to collaborate with each other and ask those questions wherever they need to, or to us. So that's what I have.
Oh, thank you so much. That seems like the feedback that you use seems like a really great way to keep those students engaged. As you said, they get a lot of their issues resolved right away without having to follow up with more questions and more things.
Absolutely.
Really
it makes a huge difference.
Thank you. And Claire.
Hi, I'm going to also share some screenshots. So here is a screenshot of the welcome page of the course, and you can see along the left is the menu. And I'm going to actually show you those buttons larger, just so that you can see the setup of the course. So in the first section under course material, we have the basic course material, but you'll see that the last link there is the modules, and that's kind of where the meat of the course is and where a lot of the interaction happens. So in the modules is a lot of student content interaction, and this is what our modules look like. We used another software to create SCORM objects and then import them into Blackboard. And this is what, once they start the module, it looks like. So along the left is the title of each lesson. And we have a lot of multimedia in these modules to keep students engaged. So my #1 priority in every course I create is student engagement. And to get that, you really need students interacting, whether that's with the content or other students or the instructor, or really, I mean, ideally, you really want to have all 3 of those types of interaction. So you can see we have videos, we have self-check questions. This slide that you see here is actually a flashcard activity where they drag the flashcard into the appropriate answer, and then it tells them if it's right or wrong. There are a lot of different types of questions like this that we give the students because they do need to go through these modules on their own time, and they do need to read and gain the knowledge that we're trying to give them. And if they're just reading and watching videos over and over, that can get boring. So we try to put a lot of interactivity within the modules. But then you'll see it in the assessment section of the course, we do have a discussion board. And this is where a lot of the student-student interaction occurs. And they collaborate here because the questions that we put on the discussion board are controversial questions or questions that don't necessarily have an answer, because this is a public health course. And so students work together on this discussion board to come up with a solution or an answer to approach a public health problem that nobody really has the answer for. Then in the assignment section, which is right under that, is where they have some essays or some, they do have a research paper. And then there are some assignments at the beginning of the course because they do need to have the scientific nutritional background, at least a basic foundation before they start. So there are assignments in there where they're counting the nutritional content in a meal so that they can understand, in order to help the public's health, they have to understand the basic nutritional, have a foundation there first. And then we do have rubrics. We use the rubric tool in Blackboard, which is fantastic because we also like to give a lot of feedback. It does prevent emails in the future, but also, that's where a lot of students' learning occurs. They learn while they're doing the assignment, but a lot of times they learn based on the feedback they get too. So the rubrics are a very important portion of the course. And then in the support area, you'll see we do have some tools to help the students. We do meet with them in Blackboard Collaborate. So there is a synchronous component. It's not required in this course, but it is there if they have questions or if they want to work synchronously with either other students or the instructor. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It seems also very exciting. And Claire, I could imagine, I would love to sit in on some of those discussion forums and see some of those discussions this year with your students in public health. With that, I can imagine some of those questions that are coming up. So you all mentioned rubrics and feedback. And so that's a nice segue to our next question, which is about the ECP rubric itself. And which sections of the rubric did you find the most challenging to meet? So we'll go around and have each of you answer those in turn, starting with Catherine. What section of the rubric was the most challenging to meet?
Sure. So the sections that I found most challenging were related to interaction logistics and to learner expectations. So in particular, I struggled with providing examples of student work for two reasons. First, I had not offered the course in this format before, so I did not have any authentic examples. But perhaps more importantly, I've had experiences in the past where students use the examples that I've provided more as a template rather than as inspiration or guidance. So I did not provide examples of student work, but instead I provided samples of paper formatting so that they would know my expectations for what their reflection paper should look like, as well as detailed instructions. So whether it was for the educational campaign, for the case study discussion boards, for their reflection paper, all of the assignments received or included lots of instructions, as well as evaluation criteria. So I provided them with a criteria that I would use to evaluate their project. They had to self-evaluate first before turning it in. And then finally, I had grading rubrics to guide students to succeed as well, like my co-panelists.
And Leslie?
I think that the hardest one in this particular course was the learner self-assessment piece. And you would think for counselors that this one wouldn't be as difficult, but we don't put self-assessment in every course because it's something that they have to do so often. This course is an 8-week course, but with COVID, it's actually moved to a 7-week course because our semesters have been compressed into a shorter time period. So we've had to rearrange some things and move some things around, and it already had such a dense curriculum and so many things in it that was just one thing that we didn't put as much of in this course. So trying to find that self-assessment piece in this course and then reflect on it in the rubric as we were writing it up, that was a little bit more difficult. We have it in other courses and we have it throughout the program, but it wasn't necessarily a piece that we had in this course. So it was something that we really had to look into a little bit more as we were writing to the ECP program rubric.
Thank you. Claire, what about you?
Well, like Catherine, we also struggled with giving examples because it was the first time we had created the course. So we created our own examples. And because they do a lot of writing in this course, they have some essays in the research paper. We had some assignments that we kind of mocked up and used as our examples. But creating the rubrics was very challenging, but I think creating any rubric is challenging. You don't want to just slap together random categories. It takes a lot of thought, and Dr. Bordley and I went back and forth a lot with what to put in the rubric so that it's truly assessing what it is that we want these students to learn. But I also think the accessibility part was challenging only because we used a lot of videos from YouTube that we didn't own, and so I had to caption them using Amara, and I didn't caption them throughout the process. We knew what we wanted to use, but we thought, okay, at the end, we'll caption everything. And that was a bad idea because I captioned for like 12 straight hours, a few days in a row. My fingers hurt. So it would have been, much smarter if we had worked on that kind of throughout rather than save it at the end.
And that is a great advice for our participants in designing their courses with that, to know that ahead of time. So then switching gears a little bit, can you tell me what was the one thing in your course that you're the proudest of and why? So the one thing you're proudest of and why? Catherine?
Sure, and I'm going to share my screen again, hopefully to illustrate a couple of these aspects. So I was most proud of how the scenario aspect of the course worked. It was really challenging to create the look and feel of the course to simulate an agency, but I think I accomplished this. So this first slide doesn't show it quite so much. It more so shows the use of an icon recurring throughout the course to indicate where the students were having to dialogue and collaborate. But when it came time to create the modules, I really tried to get authentic looking visual images, badges, icons, and things of that sort to increase authenticity as well as to help students track their progress. And all of that was relatively new for me. We'll see if we can find, this was actually an example of the students' work, so I'll skip over that. But each module, since it corresponded to a different stage of development, obviously needed to show images that represented that development. So gathering all those images, putting them all together in a way that was cohesive and that had sort of semiotic meaning that was universal to all of my students was a challenge, but I think worked well.
I mentioned earlier that we did a group assignment in our course, and that is probably what we were the most proud of in this one. Something that the legislature passed in our last session here in Texas was that school districts had to come up with threat assessment teams on their campus, and that school counselors had to be a part of that. But something that they didn't include was all of the moving pieces that went along with that. So if I click on over here, you'll see all of the topics that our students can choose from in these different groups. So that's a lot of various things and a lot of information for them to do. I mean, these could be courses in themselves. So just trying to have a group assignment for them to do and have so much information was something that was huge. This one assignment took weeks to develop and to put all of the information in and to have all of the resources for them. But when they are finished with this, they are walking away with a piece of each one of these things that they can take back when they become school counselors, and they will be an expert on it. So I think we were really proud of the fact that they are walking away with something that they then can do, and they're meeting the criteria now to meet that legislative requirement that came out a couple of years ago. So it was a monster when we were writing it, but now that it's done, goodness, it's there, and we can continue to update the resources and update the things that are in it with current and relevant information. But getting it into the module and getting it there and having a good group assignment going took a lot of time, but now that it's there, it's one that we're very proud of.
The part of the course that we're the most proud of, because it took the most time and was really the most challenging, was to create the modules. And that's, again, just because engagement was so important to us. And so we spent so much time making sure that they would be active in every single module that they went through. So we spent a lot of time going through images and finding videos and creating interactive, activities for students to complete. We have some lessons that have, a little avatar, and it walks them through, asking them questions, and then based on their answer, it would take them to a different section in the module. Then, if they got it right, they went on. If they got it wrong, they got some remediation. This is a video that we created ourselves, which videos take a very long time to create. We created some of the images ourselves too. So we just really wanted students to want to go through the modules and not to feel like it was a chore or just a requirement, because then, they're really not going to absorb very much information. So we spent a lot of time trying to come up with ways for them to learn without having to just read a chapter in a textbook or read, 30 or 40 pages. That's not really very exciting, even if it's a topic I'm interested in learning.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I know I am hoping that this is inspiring our participants and not intimidating them. This is some great work. And so I think people are getting a lot out of this session. So with that, I also like to, for you to talk about, we talked about the rubric and what was the most challenging in the rubric. What would you say was one of the most difficult things to master overall in designing your course? And just I want to give our participants the understanding that this was a lot of hard work for all of you. And as beautiful as these courses look, it wasn't overnight. So what would you say was one of the most difficult things to master?
Well, for me, it was definitely the technical side, and I do not feel that I have mastered it yet by any means. I don't have a design background, and so I've really had to experiment with and learn a lot about various behind-the-scenes skills that were new to me. I do feel like I'm getting the hang of placing images, wrapping text, editing videos, making documents accessible, and some of those other aspects of user experience. But there's definitely a learning curve there that I'm still on. And as a side note, I will say that an unexpected challenge was that it was very difficult for me to find non-copyrighted images that show a diverse group of people. And that was very important to me, both for the inclusion of my own students, as well as for fostering an inclusive view of human development, which I thought was essential for this particular course. So maybe I could issue a challenge to anybody working in the visual design world, graphic design world, and capturing images and so forth, making them available for educational purposes. That would be most appreciated.
I think in addition to all of those things, because we also don't have an instructional designer for our college, just trying to fit so much information into an 8-week course can be very challenging. And I think I mentioned that earlier, but we only have so many hours to fit so much content in, and it can get to be challenging trying to fit all those pieces and fit all of that information where it needs to go. And then at the end of the program, the students have to test. And if they don't pass that test, then they don't get their certification or their licensure or whatever that they need to get. So making sure that all of that is where it needs to be can be quite a challenge. And this was one course that even now we're like, oh, that would be good in that course, but we just don't have anywhere to put it. So just having very little time with a lot of information is a challenge for us.
Thank you. Claire?
Well, like Leslie, our big challenge was trying to get all of this information into a 6-week course. But really why that was such a challenge is because our students needed to have a basic nutrition understanding before they could get to the public health part. And some students do, some students don't. So they're coming from such different backgrounds. How do you get everyone on the same page? And that's really why we were so tech heavy in this course, because you can use adaptive learning and different technology in order to catch some students up to speed while the students who already know it are not bored.
Thank you. That's great. And it's another perfect segue. Speaking of students, how have students responded to your course? Have you seen an impact on student performance and student engagement from the design of this course? And if you've had a chance to get any student evaluations or feedback, has anything from that stood out to you with that? Catherine?
Sure. Well, I've been very grateful for the fact that students have had a very positive response to this course. I'm teaching it again this semester, and I find that students are actively engaged in their teams. They are providing positive feedback informally. We haven't had our mid-course survey yet, but that will be coming soon because it's actually currently a 7-week course that I'm teaching online. But I also am noticing a real shift in the types of emails that I get. So similar to my co-panelist who mentioned getting fewer emails or contacts about navigation and where to find things and how to operate things. Now the emails are more substantive and they're about team related questions and content questions and so forth. So that's all been a plus.
I am not teaching that course this semester. Dr. Heron is. So as far as I know, everything is going great, but she will be doing a panel session later in the day. So if you're interested, that would be something to do. Her and Ms. Atwood are doing that later. But we did pull some of the feedback from students in earlier semesters. And a couple of the ones that I really liked were, one of them said that the course was the most valuable and applicable assignments of any course that they've had so far. And they are in a 48-hour degree. So that was very impressive. And then another one said that they really felt like the group project was engaging and they had a lot of fun learning and working together, which was surprising because you get so many that don't like doing the group projects. So I think that the feedback overall has been pretty positive. And we've only taught this course, I think, 3 times. This is the 3rd semester that they're in right now. So it hasn't been offered very many times yet.
Oh, that's wonderful. And Claire?
We had a great response from students that they enjoyed the course, which is always great to hear. And when you put a SCORM object in Blackboard, it actually tells you how much time they spend on the module, and it tells you even the answers that they submit to the questions. So it was really interesting to me to see that students spent so much time on these modules. I thought they would just go through kind of, do the bare bones, but a lot of them did it more than once, or they spent, twice as much time as I thought they would. They answered all the questions. We had a couple students who said that they wish that it was a required course, because this is not required for the public health program. It is an elective, but a lot of them had said, they wish they had known all this, the nutritional, they had that nutritional knowledge prior, or that they wish everyone had to take it because it would make such a difference in the public health field. So it was very well received by students.
Thank you so much. And what about on your campus? What type of recognition did you receive on your campus for creating a winning exemplary course? And also, have you noticed a broader impact on the fact that your school won an ECP award overall on your campus?
So I'll just say that I was very gratified by the recognition that I received on my campus. The announcement actually dovetailed with our institution's widespread rollout of online teaching support. So that was exciting. And with also just with the release of our book too. So it was kind of a perfect storm, or whatever the positive equivalent of a perfect storm was. I was really humbled by the show of support from colleagues and administrators. And now I have had several people ask about how they might pursue an ECP award as well. So I'm really excited about the prospect of additional colleagues going through the process.
We actually found out fairly recently that we were awarded the ECP award. So it has not really been publicized yet, but we have been congratulated by our college administration and our e-learning department, because I think they're about the only ones that actually know we won. But we have filled out the information for it to get the news release and things like that. So I don't think any of that's even come to our university yet. So we're excited for what will happen, I guess, in the future.
Thank you so much. And Claire, what about you?
We had our newspaper write an article, our university newspaper. So that went out to everyone's email. And when I won an ECP award last time, the same thing happened. Everyone from that department was totally on board with online education, which is great. My dream would be for everyone to love online education and to want to design stellar courses. So a lot of faculty from the public health department had contacted me or our online department saying, oh, I had no idea you could do all these things. I want my course to be like this. So it really got the word out that online courses can be fun. They can be, well designed. They can be a great learning experience for students.
Thank you. And I'm kind of combine the last two questions. So first I want to ask if any of you have had the experience of being a reviewer for the Exemplary course program. And if you had, can you just talk a little bit about that? And also we want to hear, and I'm putting these questions together because they're very related, what impact has participating in the Exemplary course program had on your professional development? So whether you've participated as you have, submitting courses, but also if you've been a reviewer, if you could talk about that as well. So Catherine?
Sure. I love serving as an ECP peer reviewer. I really find it interesting to view other people's courses, and I get great ideas for my own courses that way too. But I also like giving back to the Blackboard community because it's really provided me with wonderful resources for online teaching. I will say that going through this program has had a huge impact on my own growth as an instructor and on my confidence as a course designer too. So I feel empowered to create my own courses independently and in collaboration with others too. And I really view course creation as an ongoing cycle of preparing and creating and revising a course. So the rubric provides a great set of guidelines for course creation as well as course revision. Even if I'm not preparing for an ECP application or submission, I still use the rubric to evaluate my own courses and see how I can improve them. I do feel like the next step for me is to gather data on my courses more systematically, particularly looking at the effectiveness of individual components or activities in the course. So that's what I hope for my next steps.
I have not had the opportunity to participate as a reviewer yet, but it's something that I'm looking forward to. I will say that just being part of the process has really opened up a lot of opportunities to see the different professional development that Blackboard offers. I think once you kind of get involved in the Blackboard community and you get involved in the ECP part of it, you really get to see a lot more of the different things that are offered through Blackboard. And I think that a lot of times you don't necessarily know some of the different opportunities that are out there until you really kind of dig in and see some of the different options and things. So it's something definitely that we started passing on to others in our department, and hopefully that'll pass on further even to others in our college.
I have reviewed several courses in the program, and it has been a fabulous opportunity for me. I have a master's and a PhD in educational technology, but I would say 90 or maybe 95% of what I know as an instructional designer, I have learned from reviewing other people's courses. And I am a reviewer for some other companies too. And I love seeing other people's courses. The more courses I can see, the more ideas I get for my own course. And even if it's not a fabulous course, you still get something out of it, or maybe you learn what not to do. So I have learned a lot, and a lot of what I do in my courses is what I have seen work well in other people's courses because I am a reviewer.
Thank you all so much. I think this has been fabulous. I've learned a lot today, and I hope our participants have enjoyed it as much as I have. We will have some time to take some questions in the chat. So if you have questions, participants, please put them in the chat and we will respond to them. And also, just before we wrap up, I just want to ask the panelists if anyone has any final words they would like to say.
I'd just like to say thank you to Blackboard and to the peer reviewers who put so much time into reviewing our courses. I think the program is wonderful. It's a great resource for improving online course quality, and I really recommend it to anybody who wants feedback on their courses and who is excited to showcase their own innovative work.
She said it great. I don't think I could say it any better.
Well, I just want to add one thing. If some of you are intimidated by what you saw today, or think you don't have a degree or experience in design, you really can do these things. And I think the ECP program is a great way to get your feet wet, to volunteer to be a reviewer, and you'll learn all the great ways to make your course an ECP winning course.
Thank you so much, Claire. That was perfect. All right, well, again, thank you, participants, and we will look for questions in the chat. Thank you, everyone. And now we have some time to address some of the questions that have been posted in the chat with our speakers. Also, please continue to post your questions in the chat And if we are not able to get to your question by the end of the session, we will answer them in the community. And my colleagues are going to put some links in that. So let's start. There are a lot of questions in the chat about how you get students to evaluate each other and on assessments. So do you have any incentives that you use to get students to do that peer assessment? And have you been successful in getting really valuable, substantive, rich feedback from students using peer assessment? So we'll go around. Catherine, I'll start with you. If you'd like to start first.
Sure. I mentioned briefly in the chat that we use a peer assessment form, and that's introduced to teams early in the process. Teamwork is actually one of the student learning outcomes for this course. And so students are given some guidance about how to be a good team member, how to mindfully provide feedback on each other and so forth. And using this form, they have a discussion about how their team is working. And then later in the semester, towards the end, they complete a confidential version of the form, rating all of the team members, including themselves, on some specific criteria. And the expectation is that all team members will be rated average or above in order to get full credit for the team participation component.
Thank you. And Claire, would you like to answer?
For this course, we did not have peer grading, but for other courses that I've taught, I have used that. I've used multiple different tools. I have used discussion boards if it's that I want them to work as a group to evaluate each other's papers, or I taught a course where they had to create a resume. It was a career course typically for freshmen, and they would share their resumes without their address and their phone number, but they would upload it to the discussion board, and then other students would comment, just underneath it right on the board there. I've had them use wikis. I've had them actually use a rubric to grade other students' assignments, and then they fill out the rubric. It's either a Word document or a fillable PDF, and then they upload that as an assignment right in Blackboard.
And Leslie, have you used peer assessment and evaluation within the counseling program?
Yes, we have. We've done, actually on the group assignment, they do have to rate each other on how they contributed to the group project and how they completed that portion of the group project. But we've done some similar things as the other two as well. And we've also used the peer process within Turnitin in Blackboard also.
Thank you. So our next question is about support from others at your institution. And I know we talked about collaborating with people, but can you just again, for some of our participants, talk about support you got from instructional designers, whether you got release time for your department to develop the Exemplary course. So what type of institutional support did you get for developing your course? And again, we'll start with Catherine first.
Sure. We have a wonderful online teaching team, and that consists of instructional designers as well as tech support specialists. And they've been a wonderful source of not only support, but I'd say advice and also just kind of helping to troubleshoot specific things within the course as well.
And Claire?
This is where I'm really lucky because the University of Toledo has a fantastic online department, and they have instructional designers, educational technologists. There's a help desk where both faculty and students can call. They can stop in person. There's an online chat. There's a multimedia developer. So pretty much anything you could want or need to develop a course, our online department offers that. And then they also have several guides that they've created that are public and available right online for pretty much anything you would ever need to do in Blackboard. So if it's 2 in.the morning and I'm working and they're not working, I can, go right to that website. I can search and find what it is I'm looking for and how to do it. They have screenshots with, written descriptions right underneath.
That's fantastic. And Leslie, what type of support did you get from the institution?
So we have a fantastic e-learning department if we do have questions and things like that. We do not get release time to develop our courses, so it's kind of when we have time as we're developing those new courses. We do not have an instructional designer in our college, but the other colleges on campus do have instructional designers to support them. So it's just depending on where you are in our college, but we do have a great IT department, a great e-learning department that does help when we have those questions. And they're very similar to Claire. They've got some guides up that
if we have a question in the middle of the night, we can go look and find those answers that we have questions to.
That is great. The next question is, do you grade engagement or interactive activities? And if so, how? So, Catherine?
That's a good question. All of the activities are interactive in the course, with the exception of the reflection paper. And so technically, all of the activities have that component that is specifically graded. And we do have a kind of set of criteria and expectations that we use in sort of a rubric form.
And Claire?
I do, yes. For this public health course, which is a graduate course, we actually grade them for completing the modules. It's a very small part of their grade, but it does encourage them to actually go through and complete all of the interactive pieces. And in the other courses I teach, I also grade my students for completing those modules.
And Leslie?
Yes, so if there is an assignment that requires them to have any interaction or communication with the other class members, it's included in the rubric as well. And depending on what level of interaction, that is part of their score. So.
Thank you. Thanks. And can we talk a little bit about that interactivity between the students? And some of you mentioned that you mentioned it during the presentation, but can you share a bit more about how you achieved it in the LMS, in Blackboard? How did you really integrate especially in a fully online course, how did you foster that interactivity among students? Catherine?
Sure. So there was both synchronous and asynchronous interaction in this course. The asynchronous interaction took place in the discussion board. So every week there would be a discussion based on one of the cases or one aspect of the case that they were working on. And there would be an expectation of a certain number of posts and replies and asking questions and so forth, all of which again took place asynchronously. In addition, the team campaign was a synchronous project, and teams were assigned early on, or actually self-selected early on. So there were expectations in each module that the teams would be meeting. We set up a Blackboard Collaborate space for each team. And so they had access to that. I think some teams used various tools, but that was available to them. And I actually then would pop into team meetings. They would let me know whenever the team meeting was happening. And I would plan to meet with them at least once to find out how things were going and to give my feedback.
And Claire?
Yes, like Catherine, this course also used discussion boards. This course was fully asynchronous though, but students interacted with each other through the discussion board tool. I also teach a math class online that I have taught for years. And for all of those years, there's been a requirement that students have to meet once a week synchronously. And that's the case for all of our online math courses. So we meet in Blackboard Collaborate and they work with each other on various math problems in there. And the first time I taught the course, I thought no one in an online course is going to want to meet at the same time, but my students absolutely love it. And there was one year where, class fell on Halloween and I made it optional. They all came. I was actually surprised. Yeah. So they really like that synchronous interaction, but they also really, chat away on the discussion board. I'll have hundreds of posts to read through.
That is fantastic. And Leslie, how did you work with that?
Mine was very similar to Catherine's. So we had the asynchronous discussion boards that they had to do. And I think I mentioned in the chat during the session that we also use Flipgrid and we embed that within Blackboard. So they do the video discussion boards with each other as well. And then we had the group project that they were working on throughout the class. And we embedded pieces of that in each module. So they're gradually working up to the big project at the end. So we do not do any synchronous because we have people in various time zones and all over the place, but we do the asynchronous all throughout the course. And so far it's worked really well.
Thank you. Now the next question is more directed for Claire. It's about Articulate Rise. So we had some questions in the chat. People would asked if you could talk a bit more about that. And then also for Leslie and Catherine, if there were any technology tools that you used or third-party tools that you use in addition to Blackboard, if you would speak to that. But we're going to start with Claire this time to talk about Articulate Rise.
Yes, so Articulate Rise is a web-based software that you can purchase a yearly license for. If you go to the website right now, the cost is, I think, $1,000, something very expensive, but you can ask them for an educational license and you get a very big discount. So it is about $500 a year. I think it's $499 and some odd cents. And for me, it's been worth it because I create the modules for all of my courses using that software. And I design a lot of courses every year too, courses that I don't teach. I'm not a full-time faculty member. So for me, it's been very worth it. I know others who have purchased a license and then created all their courses over the course of a year, and then they didn't renew the license, and then they had already downloaded the modules, so then they just use the same modules. But you would need a license to edit and make changes. So I guess it would depend on how often you're changing your course content, but it's very easy to use. I am not a programmer. I don't know how to code. It's simply, click what you want, it pops in, you type, your content, you can copy paste. And others who have used it with no tech background have been able to create very beautiful modules in a short amount of time.
Thank you so much, Pat. And Leslie, did you use any third-party technology tools outside of what was already in Blackboard?
So we use the Flipgrid, and we've also used Padlet, which is another third-party tool. And then we've gotten to where we are integrating a lot of Google tools and embedding those within the course, because then you update it once and you don't have to go into the modules and update a lot of things in every course. You can just update things in one place and have it update in multiple courses if you're using it that way. So that's been really nice as well.
Thank you. And Catherine, what about you and third-party technology?
I would say that's been pretty limited for me, although I have used various video recording and editing software. So Camtasia, I've used Captivate in the past, but more recently I've actually just been using the tools within either a Mac or PC Windows-based, as well as Zoom occasionally to record bits and then edit them with other software.
Thank you, thank you. And next, the participants want you to talk about accessibility. So good practice suggests things like captions for videos and alternative text for images. Was this something that you had to learn about? Were you already familiar with some of the accessibility things? Also, what programs did you use for captions? And then just any other thoughts you want to share on accessibility from a faculty perspective. So go back to our original order, start with Catherine.
Sure. I feel like I learned a lot about accessibility the first time I went through the ECP program, and our institution has Ally in Blackboard, and that's been a wonderful tool for checking the accessibility of a lot of our artifacts, our resources, images, and so forth. I load all of my videos onto YouTube, and so I've just done either manual captioning or have created a transcript that I load into YouTube to kind of coordinate with the sound, or excuse me, with the video that's happening. But lately I've been trying my hand at tagging PDFs, and I feel like there's a very big learning curve for that too. But hopefully that's something I can continue to improve upon.
And Claire. Yeah.
Well, this is where I'm lucky again, because my online department offers a lot of accessibility trainings, and we have a very fantastic Student Disability Services Department. So anytime a training's been offered on accessibility, I have gone to it. And that's been the case for several years. So when I started designing this course, I feel like I had a pretty good handle on accessibility already. So if your institution offers trainings, or if you get an email saying, another company's offering a free training, I highly recommend signing up for it, because if you can make everything accessible right from the beginning, it's so much easier than waiting until the end. So if you already know how to create an accessible Word document or an accessible PDF when you start, it's a lot easier than trying to go back and fix it. So we used Word, PDFs, like Catherine said, there's an accessibility checker in both of those tools. So you can always double check your work. And then once you learn how to use the checker, it's pretty easy to fix things. And then I did mention that I didn't caption the videos that didn't belong to me until the end. That was a bad idea. But I did caption my own videos right when I made them, because right after I made them, I could remember what I said. And it's a lot easier to caption when I can remember rather than a month later.
And thank you so much. And Leslie.
So our department was one of the first to go online here at the university, and we kind of were trial by fire. So we learned a lot of things through trial and error. And I think through that experience, we've really learned a lot about accessibility. And right now we're in the process of implementing Ally. And I happen to be on the Ally implementation team, which has taught me quite a bit as well. So between those two things, I think I definitely agree with Claire. If you can do it from the beginning, it's going to save you a ton of work on the backside. We're using a program called Otter for transcribing a lot of the videos that we use, because you get like 500 free minutes a month, and we're all about not having to pay for things. But then our disability services office will also transcribe some videos for us, depending on which students we have in classes and things of that nature. So we've got great people on campus that are willing to help, depending on what the need is and which students we have that are in the courses and what their needs are as well.
Thank you. Well, thank you all so much for being here today and for this. We have one final question, and I think this one is probably more for me, but I would also like to give each of you an opportunity if you want to answer. But people have asked about how to get involved in the Exemplary course program. And so the first step is to join the Blackboard community. And my colleagues are putting the link in the chat now of how to join the community. You submit a course, you download the rubric for the ECP rubric, and you join a cohort program, the ECP cohort program, and you sign up to review courses. And that's something that I really encourage you to do. I know our panelists talked about that earlier. And so I'm going to ask each of you if you'd like to just add something to that about getting involved and how to get involved. Catherine?
Sure. I have found the Blackboard community to be a wonderful resource, and I went through the cohort program too and found it very valuable. I do recommend that you all consider joining with a peer. So finding a colleague at your institution, either in your own department or in another department, sometimes that interdisciplinary perspective can really shed new insights on your work, and go through it together. And that way you have a partner, you've got somebody you can bounce ideas off of and collaborate with.
Claire?
Well, when I first heard about the program, I thought, I don't have time to do one more thing, but I did sign up, and I'm glad that I did, because what I learned from being part of the program actually saved me so much time with creating courses that in the long run, I actually saved myself time by volunteering for it.
Thank you. And Leslie?
I would say just get involved in the community. There's a lot of even discussions that are going on that can answer a lot of questions that you have if you get involved there, and just even reading through the discussions and what people are posting in that Blackboard community will answer a lot of questions that you may have about the rubric and about things within your course as well.
Thank you. Again, thank you to all of you. And I know we have a couple of minutes left, so I'm just going to give it one more second to see if anyone else has a question. And again, to all the participants, thank you so much for being here today. I hope you're enjoying it. I know this was a great kickoff session for the afternoon or the morning, depending on where you are in the world, perhaps evening for some of you. But the next session on fostering student engagement, we really encourage you to come. And also our networking breaks this afternoon or later today in the session, we have our networking break, where you can go in and talk more about accessibility. There is also a networking break, the Exemplary course program with Carrie Smouse and Lisa Clark as well, and one on engaging students and surviving remote teaching, as well as a trivia game. So please do jump into those sessions as well. And the sessions are designed, they're 45 minutes, but they're designed so that you can visit more than one if you would like. So please take the time to go into some of those sessions and have some more chance to interact with your peers and colleagues. So, oh, and also don't forget to check Twitter for more links as well. So the links are being tweeted out as well. Some of the links in the chat are not working, but all of the links are being tweeted out. So again, thank you very much, and I will see you all in the next session.